Until I put that story on paper for you in your class, I have never, ever told a single soul about what happened. It was a lot of tears, a lot of remembrance that I had tried to bury for years and years. I had been to a VA counselor several times who had said, you need to tell what's going on. I wouldn't tell him what had happened.
Almost 50 years after his service in Vietnam, a half-century carrying an horrific story in his heart, an old soldier finally decides it's time to tell it. Hello. Welcome to the Mighty Pen Podcast. I'm David L. Robbins, your host and founder of the Mighty Pen Project, a free writing program for veterans and their families, in partnership with the Virginia War Memorial Foundation in Richmond, Virginia. In this podcast, I'll sit down with Norm Miller, author of today's powerful story, The Running, Burning, Screaming Girl. Afterwards, Norm will talk with me from his home in California. Let's listen to The Running, Burning, Screaming Girl, performed by David Bridgewater.
The tight skirt, too short for modesty, hides little. I get a glimpse of a blue thong as she settles on the bar stool next to mine. She wears little jewelry and no makeup. She's just a kid, younger than my granddaughters. Call me Candy. Buy me a drink and tell me what's bothering you. I don't want what she's selling. If I stay mute, she'll seek another warm body with a wallet. I should ignore her. I should. I don't. Why do you think something's bothering me? Well, you're drinking in a hotel bar, alone at midnight. You can talk to me about it. I'm a good listener. Her smile isn't real. I don't have a room here. I don't want to go home. That's why I'm drinking in a hotel bar alone at midnight. I raise my hand. Yeah, I could use another. The bartender, across the room watching television, looks over. He's probably wishing I'd leave with Call Me Candy so he can close. Tough shit. I'm here until the mandated closing time. Is a lady drinking? Call Me Candy nods before I can say no. The tip of her tongue slides out between straight, brilliant white teeth and caresses her lips. Did the braces come off last year when she was a freshman? Now, when I was younger, that move would have stoked my fire, but her attempt to seduce is amateurish. I'll buy her a few drinks, but that's it. I don't want to go there. I know what's waiting. I'll have what you're drinking. She leans closer, trying hard to make a sale. Her hand touches my forearm and slides down until her fingers land on my inner thigh. They gently squeeze like a shopper checking a mango. The fingers slide to my crotch and grope before pulling away. She's surprised there's no reaction. She looks around. I'm the only customer. Will she leave? I shouldn't encourage her to stay. I shouldn't. But if she's willing to just talk. I fumble with my wallet and extract 2 20s. Scotch for the lady and me. Call Me Candy fakes another smile. The bartender's grin is real. She sips the booze and tries to re-engage. Why don't you want to go home? Something there scares me. Oh, what could scare a big, strong guy like you? My bed. You're afraid of your bed? I'm afraid of what's in it. What, a wife? A girlfriend? There's no wife. I've had 3 and they all left. I gave up on girlfriends. They're a waste. Call Me Candy giggles and leans closer. A soft breast touches my shoulder. Fingers caress the back of my neck. Her head so close she whispers with warm breath, I could help. Oh, take me home and I'll show you. I shrug her off. You can't fix nightmares. She frowns. This time I'm certain she'll leave, but I'd like her to stay. I lay 5 more 20s on the bar. Those are yours if you'll talk with me. The bills are snatched. Nightmares, huh? Every night I scream, thrash around, and become violent with whoever's near me. That's why my wives left and took my kids. That's the reason I don't have girlfriends. That's why I don't want you in my bed. Oh, what do you dream about that scares you so much? Is it because I'm paying for her time and she caught me at the right stage of drunk? Is it because the bartender's just far enough away and there's nobody else in the bar to hear? Is it because she's just a child who, unlike most adults, might be hesitant to point a finger at me and voice disgust at my part in what happened? Maybe it's just time to tell someone. Whatever the reason, or for all of the reasons, it'll require a history lesson. Did you know Fanti Kim Phuc was 9 when an AP photographer, Nick Ut, took a photograph of her, naked, running and screaming on a road near Trang Bang, north of Saigon? Oh, who's she? A Vietnamese girl. She'd been burned with napalm. She was running with 4 other children to escape flames and the pain. The photo was one of the iconic images of the Vietnam War. It shocked America. People think of war as men killing each other. Somehow that makes it easier to justify. They seldom think of the children caught up in the fighting. Oh, Mrs. Richardson, my history teacher, had that photograph in her classroom. I'm sure it's the one you were talking about. It was near the door, and all of us looked at it every day. A student's mother filed a complaint, and the principal made her take it down. Do you know why the mother complained? The girl's vagina was in the picture. The mother said young minds shouldn't be exposed to depraved, disgusting, obscene photos. Some mother was concerned a photograph showing the genitals of a 9-year-old girl running for her life would embarrass the girls and make the boys horny. The average age of a soldier in Vietnam was 22. That's what, only 5 or 6 years older than you? How about the effect on the young, innocent minds of those GIs who watched her being burned alive by congealed gasoline? Oh, you saw her. She's who you dream about. I never saw her. I only saw the photograph. It was taken in June 1972. I was in Nam from 68 to 69 and 70 to 71. I mentioned that photo because almost everybody remembers it. Fanti Kim Phuc isn't the girl in my nightmares. Well, who is? There's lots of them. Nameless girls, boys, toddlers, and babies who'd been shot, stabbed, or blown up by mines, artillery, or bombs. They all weren't naked and they all weren't running, but every one of them who didn't die immediately was screaming. I held some as they gasped their last breaths. The one I dream about most often is the schoolteacher's daughter. Both our glasses are empty. Hey, we'll have another, I holler. Show me the money. There's no way we've drunk up $40 worth of scotch. But I don't argue. I don't argue with anybody about anything. I toss 2 more bills on the bar. Those are C notes, Call Me Candy says. Really? Well, whatever we don't drink up is yours. I say this in a raised voice so the bartender hears me. I don't want him to accuse her of stealing it. Now her smile looks real. Who is the school teacher's daughter? Our glasses are refilled. The bartender takes away one of the hundreds and returns with a crumpled wad of bills. I don't count it. I already know he's cheating me. That's his karma. I wait for him to walk off. I commanded an advisory team in the Central Highlands. There were no schools in the area, and I decided to create one. We had a fund to tap for reconstruction and resettlement projects, so I had plenty of piasters. I picked an older building in one village. I got all the things needed: desks and chairs, books, pens, pencils, writing paper, a blackboard, and chalk, lots of chalk. I hired a teacher. The man was reluctant, but he was desperate to find work so he wouldn't be drafted. Well, why was he reluctant? It, it was dangerous for him and his family. But he never said it was a stupid idea or flat out refused. In Vietnamese culture, it's an insult for a subordinate to question a superior. As an advisor, I was equal to a district chief. Few would object to whatever I decided. Oh, wow. I had power. I should have used it wisely. I should have listened. When it opened, 17 boys and girls aged 7 to 15 entered the one-room school. I wanted to teach some English, hoping they'd learn enough to find work as interpreters with the U.S. military or civilian contractors and have better lives. I take a sip of scotch. I don't chug it because I'm buying time before I have to tell the rest of the story. I think that was a good thing you did. Yeah, the VC didn't agree with you. Who's that? The Viet Cong, Victor Charlie, the bad guys. We called them VC or just Charlie. They closed the school. Oh, they hurt those kids. Call me Candy guesses. I'll bet the school teacher's daughter was one of them. She was too young to go to school. Charlie just taught the kids a lesson. They believed the villagers' purpose was to grow food for them. They expected the kids to work the rice paddies. They didn't need school, and God help any who wanted to learn English. The village chief had tried to warn me, but I didn't listen any more than I'd listened to the school teacher. I was the all-knowing American advisor. I decided the village needed a school, so he had to do what I said, even though he knew better. I've always wondered how he convinced those kids. They all knew what might happen to them. Well, if they didn't hurt the students, how did they teach them a lesson? A few nights after the school opened, the VC ambushed my advisory team and pinned us down for an hour. That was all the time Charlie needed. We heard the shooting and explosions. We found the village chief dead and the students kneeling in the rubble of the schoolhouse. They'd been told to stay there until morning and contemplate if going to school was really that important. Nothing I said or did convinced them to move or their parents to move them. Nobody even brought coats or blankets. It was monsoon season and it was pouring. Those kids were soaked and cold, but they knelt there all night, staring at the teacher. Charlie had cut off his hands before shooting him in the back of the head. The message was clear. School was not allowed, and don't touch American chalk. Call me Candy Gags. She exhales several times. Oh, my God. What happened to the teacher's daughter? I answer before I find a reason not to. A child was screaming. I ran to a hut with my medic on my heels. It was wet and muddy outside, but I couldn't fathom why there was water all over the dirt floor. The teacher's wife was lying in a puddle. She'd been shot in the head, too. Next to her was their 3-year-old daughter. Beautiful girl. She always ran to me when she saw me coming. I toss her high in the air. She laughed. I taught her to pump her fist and shout, USA, before I'd give her a piece of the hard candy. Now, she was lying in a pool of muddy water on the dirt floor of a squalid hut, squirming and screaming, except it wasn't her. The memories making me weep. Call me Candy hands me a paper napkin. I'm embarrassed, but I accept it. Her eyes are huge, face ashen. If it wasn't her, who was it? I need to finally tell somebody. It wasn't a who. It was a thing. A grotesque parody of a human child with no face and most of the skin from its upper body blistered and hanging around its waist. My medic pushed past me and knelt by the writhing, screaming creature. He injected shots of morphine until it quit moving and screaming. Call me Candy, shivering. What had they done to her? Villagers told me the VC stripped the girl, sat her on the dirt floor, and poured boiling water from a cauldron over her head. They wanted everyone to know what would happen to anyone shouting out support for the Americans, even a child who just wanted a piece of candy. The mother attacked one of the soldiers with a rice cutter and they shot her. It was my fault. The VC tortured that girl and killed her parents and the village chief. I was arrogant. The teacher's daughter was naked and screaming. If that mother at your school saw a photograph of that, would she be upset if the girl's vagina showed? Oh, fuck. How could anybody do something like that to a child? She's in my nightmares, along with the hundreds of other kids I saw shot, burned, and blown up. Some lived. A lot were disfigured. I was 19 on my first tour, 21 on my second. Do you think seeing those things might have messed up my young, innocent mind? Oh, it's so awful. All combat vets experience awful things. Talking about it stirs up memories we want to put to rest. We deny our PTSD, medicate with alcohol and drugs, and suffer alone. And sometimes the dreams get so bad, one of us eats a pistol. I slide off my bar stool. Where are you going? Call Me Candy asks. To my bed, to find out if sharing this makes the nightmares worse. I raise her hand and kiss the back of it. Get a life, Candy. If you don't, you'll be having your own nightmares. I don't stumble too much as I head for the door. Not as drunk as some nights.
I'm joined today by Norman Miller from Lincoln, California, the author of The Running Naked Screaming Girl. Norm, other than observing on the obvious about how powerful that story is, I want to go to a different topic from the story at first. You said twice in that piece, maybe it's just time to tell someone. Yeah. And that, to me, to my ear, struck me as the theme of that piece. Yes, it was terrible atrocity, and specifically for a young soldier to bear and experience. But here we are, right, many years later, and the story seems to be about the need to testify. I want to ask you about that first. Where does that need reside in you, and where is it now?
Naked Running, Screaming Girl is a true story. Every single bit of it except for the bar. The bar was my writing this for you. Until I put that story on paper for you in your class, I have never, ever told a single soul about what happened. So it was extremely difficult to do. I had to rewrite it many, many times before I could feel that I had done justice to it. It was a lot of tears, a lot of remembrance that I had tried to bury for years and years. I had been to a VA counselor several times who had said, you need to tell what's going on. I wouldn't tell him what had happened. And I figured that this was the moment. The bar was set. You set the scene for me. You invited me into your class, and I was able to listen to other people, and that gave me the courage to do this. Where am I with it? I ended the story with, as you recall, it said, I'm hoping when I go to bed, it won't, the telling somebody will have made the dreams easier. Regretfully, it didn't. One of the reasons I haven't been writing with you after is because it was a very difficult time for months and months it brought everything back to the forefront. So since that time, I have been able to share the story now with some of my family who can't believe it. I have shared it with a few close friends who can't believe it, numbering probably 6, 7 people total. So other than your readers, I have shared it with no one else. And I don't know that I can, David. I still struggle because it isn't about just the school teacher's daughter. And I hated to do this. I had to keep calling her that because for the life of me, I couldn't remember the girl's name. And I didn't want to invent a name for her. I didn't want it to be a character. She was a real person. The way I remember her after 60 years or whatever it's been is she was the school teacher's daughter. And that's the way I wanted her to be addressed in the story.
You served 2 deployments in Vietnam.
Yes, sir.
What took you back?
Do you want the truth or you want to be happy?
Give me both, and let's have a find your own ending adventure.
The truth is, I was sitting in Fort Lewis, Washington, in between tours, and if you might know the military, you have to go see a dentist once a year. I have a death fear of dentists. I'd rather have a sharp stick shoved in my eye than sit in a dental chair. And so I went to my dental appointment, and the dentist, a good old Army dentist, talked about the things that he was going to do. I said, thank you very much. I'll set appointments with you later. And I walked out down to officer procurement and volunteered to go back to Nam. Because I'd rather got shot in the head than sit in that dental chair. That's the truth.
I'm a pretty good fiction writer. I could never have made that up hard. Man, Norm,
it's the truth, David. It's not a story.
So, okay, smile for me, Norm. Your teeth look good. You got over something.
Well, I've wanting to be able to eat when I get into my 80s, I figured I better get work done. So I'm able to sit there now and grit. Well, I don't grit my teeth because you can't do that, but wring my hands at least and let them work. So, yeah, I knew I was going to go back. I was going to be a career officer, and I knew I would be getting a second assignment, to go back. I probably predated it by a couple of months of when I would have got orders back anyway. But it gave me a good excuse to go ahead and go down and say, send me back.
Let's return to this issue of testifying. In the story, you say that all combat vets suffer some residual effect of the combat.
I truly believe that.
That's been your experience.
Yes, sir.
It has been mirrored in the Mighty Pen Project, we've done, 200, 250 veterans have come through the class. And in our most of a decade, I have yet to see a combat vet who didn't have some story they needed to tell, they needed to put down, they needed to capture inside the four corners of a page, like a genie in a bottle. It does not make me happy, Norm, to hear that your testimony in this beautiful, powerful, evocative story did not afford you some relief. I almost feel the kind of responsibility you expressed in the story as the chieftain who asked the teacher to teach and it cost him his life. I almost feel some responsibility for opening up this Pandora's box for you.
I appreciate that, but I don't in any way feel that. It was a struggle, and you were able to help me touch some of the stuff. As I said in the story, David, the one I dream about most was the school teacher's daughter. There's nightmares about many others. I wasn't making up things when I said I've seen hundreds of kids shot, stabbed, killed, blown up in any kind of horrific manner you can think. I was an advisor. I went around to many, many villages and quite a few different areas where action had taken place, both from Viet Cong, NVA, and our U.S. forces, who weren't especially careful at times about who they were shooting. It wasn't just about her. She was the most powerful. She's the one that caused me the most difficulty remembering. But my purpose of this story, if anything, wasn't even so much me being able to come to grips with my PTSD, was to encourage other people to recognize they have PTSD. I have a very close friend that lives here in the community, and he's a combat vet. He has PTSD, undoubtedly, this from the things he describes to me, but he won't admit it in any manner. He is one of many, many I've met who are the same, and many you've met who are the same, I'm sure. I wrote that story hoping not so much that it would help me. I was curious if it would. The VA counselor insisted it would be the best thing I could do. He was wrong, but counselors can be wrong, so that's okay. I don't hold that against him. But I was hoping to encourage others who have been in combat to come out and express the horror and the feelings that we have. Look at what's going on right now with Hamas and Israel and in Palestine, and both sides, children, babies, infants being killed, mutilated, massacred. How can people watch that on the news constantly and not feel? How can they do that? And then to be in it, to be a part of it, to be doing the action, causing the action that's causing those deaths or injuries or mutilations. How can you just say to yourself, oh, it's okay. It's just every day. I'll just walk away, go home, have a beer, and everything will be okay. It doesn't work that way.
Norm, as somebody who's struggled with PTSD and experienced it in not only in yourself, but in your friends and your comrades, a bit of advice, perhaps. My hope is that people will listen to these podcasts and will identify with the veterans we speak to and their stories. Could you offer to a listener, somebody from whatever war? There have been way too many. One is too many, of course.
Sure.
Anything you can offer. You can hold your hand out to another veteran somewhere listening to this podcast, or a loved one who can advise a loved one with PTSD. What can you tell them?
I never believed until I wrote this story for you and I let my wife read it before I sent it to you. I never believed that she would understand and accept what happened, my part in what happened. And so I was surprised by how she did. It was like, holy cow, people can understand. They can't experience it, they can't feel it, but they at least in for her part, can understand. And I think I told you I shared it with some few friends and family, and unbelievably to me, they all have expressed the same kind of feeling back, in that we understand how difficult this was and what you did. And I think for my combat vets out there, brothers and sisters both, I think the hardest part is accepting that people aren't going to be as judgmental as you might think, as I believed at least they were going to be. And I think if you have somebody close and that's the person you need to start with. You got to open up with them. Let them know what's going on. I think that's the first step. It doesn't have to be call me candy in a bar, but at least reach out.
Norm, since you wrote that story for the Mighty Pen, and by extension for me, I cannot tell you the honor and the responsibility that puts on me to tell you how much I appreciate it.
Thank you. That's kind of you.
Means a lot. Means a lot that we were able to be there for you. And I know, Norm, I know that it will give you peace. And I feel it will. That's all I can say, because I wasn't there, brother. I want to thank you, Norm, so much for writing that story and for spending the time with me today.
Well, you're very welcome, and you're very kind in your words. And I would share with anybody that is struggling in any way with the PTSD issues, your project is the most exciting thing I could recommend to them, because although I say it didn't help me for a long time, I'm sure it's helped me, because here I am talking to you today, and I've never done that. So that was the first step. Here we are this far along. Never in my life would I believe that'd be at the point where I'm sitting here having this discussion with you. So guys, gals, get it on, meet David, get it down on paper and tell your friends and let your family know, and it's worth it.
Thank you, Norm. Stay well, brother. The Mighty Pen Project is a free writing program for military veterans and their families, offered by the Virginia War Memorial Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit. If you'd like to learn more about the Mighty Pen, or just send us your thoughts, email us at mpodcast@vawarmemorial.org, or use the link in the podcast description. If you're a veteran or a family member of a serviceman or woman listening to this podcast anywhere in America, and you want to learn how to best write and tell your own powerful stories, you can sign up for one of our Mighty Pen writing workshops on Zoom. If you want to read today's piece and many more, use the link to go to the Mighty Pen archive. If you enjoy this podcast, please share it. Original music for this episode provided by Jackson Albrecht. Lastly, if you'd like to support the Mighty Pen's efforts to record and preserve these stories of service, adventure, and sacrifice, follow the charitable donation link in the podcast description. I'm David L. Robbins, and I want to thank you for listening to the Mighty Pen Podcast. It is an honor.